This short film looks at the two Asian countries of India and Japan and compares them on a variety of factors including physical features, human features, and life in rural and urban areas. India is located in the south of Asia. It covers almost 3.3 million square kilometres and is the seventh largest country in the world. India borders 6 countries: China, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Bhutan, and Myanmar. India has 7,000 kilometres of coastline along the Indian Ocean, and its large water area is the 4th biggest in the world. Japan is located in the far east of Asia. It is an archipelago of over 6,000 islands, and at 370,000 kilometres squared, it is a little larger than the UK. The 5 most important islands are Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu, Shikoku, plus the much smaller southerly Okinawa Island, which is situated between the main islands of Japan and Taiwan. Unlike India, Japan has no land borders, but shares maritime borders with 7 countries: China, Russia, North Korea, South Korea, the Philippines, Taiwan, and the USA. Japan has over 29,000 kilometres of coastline along the Pacific Ocean to the east, the Sea of Japan to the west, and the East China Sea to the south. India is over 8 times the size of Japan. However, Japan has a massive coastline which is 4 times longer than India's. This is due to Japan being composed of thousands of islands with many indented bays. Japan's water area is less than 5% of India's. Let's look a bit more closely at India's geography. India boasts the world's highest mountain range, the Himalayas, which lie in the very north of the country. The highest point in India, the Kanchenjunga Peak, is situated here. In the southwest of India are the Western Ghats, a beautiful mountain range and one of the most biodiverse places in the world. India also has a desert. This is the Thar Desert, which is located in northwest India. This barren landscape covers an area of 170,000 square kilometres. This is about half the size of the whole of Japan. On the southern part of the west coast of India lie the tropical beaches of Goa. Some of the major rivers in India include the Brahmaputra, the Indus, the Ganges, the Yamuna, the Kaveri, and the Godavari. The Indus and the Brahmaputra are both very long, at 2,900 kilometres in length. That's almost as long as the whole of Japan. India has large plains covering over 40% of the country. The fertile Indo-Gangetic Plain runs across the north of the country and is the largest. 23% of land in India is forest, and there are over 103 national parks which protect important areas for wildlife, including Ranthambore and Hemis National Parks, both of which I have visited. This is me in Hemis. So how does Japan's geography compare? Japan is located in the Pacific Ring of Fire, and its islands are volcanic. There are 270 volcanoes in total, 100 of which are active. Located near the heart of Japan is Mount Fuji, a volcanic mountain with a height of over 3,770 metres and Japan's highest point. Although Japan has over 6,000 islands, 97% of Japan's land area comes from only 4 of Japan's islands. A series of rugged mountain ranges, including the Japanese Alps, run through each of the main islands. 75% of the land area is mountainous. These mountains are heavily forested and have steep rivers. The only other developed nations with such high forest cover are Finland and Sweden. Plains account for about 25% of the land, and there are 3 major plains situated on the island of Honshu: the Kanto Plain, which is the largest, and the Nobi and Osaka Plains. Some of the major rivers in Japan include the Shinano, the Tone, Kitakami, Ishikari, and the Abukuma. The longest river is the Shinano River, which is 367 kilometres in length. Almost 70% of Japan is forest, and there are 34 national parks in Japan, including Nikko National Park and Fuji Hakone National Park. Hot springs are numerous in Japan due to the volcanic nature of the islands. In comparison, we can see that India has a far more varied physical landscape, which ranges from Arctic glaciers in the north to arid desert in the central area and tropical beaches in the south. This is not surprising given its much larger size. Japan has a greater proportion of mountainous areas than India, 2.5 times as much. A greater amount of India is flat plains or plateau, 40% compared to 25%. Japan has proportionally 3 times more forested area than India. Japan's highest peak is less than half the height of India's highest mountain, whilst its longest river is about an eighth of the length of India's longest river. India's climate varies widely, from the very cold alpine tundra and glaciers in the Himalayas, to arid deserts in the west, and to the humid tropical areas in the southern region. Most areas, though, do not experience temperatures below 10 degrees Celsius. India experiences the monsoon from June to September, and monsoon flooding is common. This can also cause landslides. Average rainfall varies considerably from year to year and across the country. It is usually around 1,000 millimeters a year, that can be less than 200 or 300 millimeters in arid areas like Rajasthan. Drought is a major problem. Water was so scarce recently in the city of Chennai that it completely ran out of water, and the large expansion of cities like Gurgaon and Bangalore are putting massive pressure on water resources in these areas. Earthquakes are also common due to the Indian plate driving into Asia. Japan's climate is mostly temperate with 4 distinct seasons. The main island, Honshu, has a humid subtropical climate with warm and wet summers and mild winters. January is usually the coldest month and August the hottest. September and October are the main rainy season. Hokkaido, the northernmost island, has a humid continental climate with long, harsh winters with a large amount of snow. Okinawa in the south, however, has long hot summers with temperatures around 32 degrees Celsius. Japan's annual rainfall is 1,764 millimeters. Typhoons or tropical cyclones often hit Japan, and lying on the Ring of Fire, Japan is susceptible to earthquakes and tsunamis. Japan annually records the most earthquakes in the world. Japan's volcanoes are another natural hazard. Its 100 active volcanoes account for 10% of the world's active volcanoes. India's climate is mostly warmer and more tropical than Japan's. However, India's climate is more extreme, ranging from Arctic to humid tropical conditions. Both countries are affected by extreme weather like monsoons or cyclones, and both experience earthquakes. India's mainland has no active volcanoes, unlike Japan. Japan doesn't suffer with droughts like India due to its higher rainfall and the lower pressure on water supplies from its population. India is comprised of 29 states, including Delhi, Maharashtra, West Bengal, Karnataka, Rajasthan, and Haryana. The capital city is New Delhi, located in the state of Delhi in the north of India. Delhi is the second wealthiest city in India after Mumbai. It is the political centre of India and home of the Indian government, as well as being a commercial, transport and cultural hub. The National Capital Region includes Delhi and the surrounding urban sprawl which encompasses Gurgaon, Noida and Faridabad. It is a densely populated area with over 46 million people. Other major Indian cities include Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, Bangalore and Hyderabad. One of the most famous buildings in the world is the Taj Mahal, which is situated in Agra and is one of the 7 wonders of the world. This mausoleum was built by Shah Jahan in 1632 for his favourite wife. Another well-known place in India, although for all the wrong reasons, is Bhopal. This was the site of an industrial disaster in 1984 when a chemical leak from an insecticide plant spread across densely populated neighbourhoods and killed over 20,000 people and injured thousands more. Japan has 8 regions, which are subdivided into a total of 47 state-like prefectures. For example, Kanto, Japan's most populated region, has prefectures of Chiba, Gunma, Ibaraki, Kanagawa, Saitama, Tochigi, and Tokyo. Japan's capital city is Tokyo, and the population in the total metro area is 32.5 million people. Tokyo is the largest urban economy in the world by GDP, is the centre of business and finance, and home to the headquarters of many international banks and insurance companies. It is the hub for Japan's transportation, publishing, electronics and broadcasting industries, and an international centre of research and development, and has many major universities. Other major cities include Yokohama, Osaka, Nagoya, and Sapporo. Nagasaki and Hiroshima are two infamous cities in Japan due to American atom bombs being dropped on them in 1945. Japan's 2011 earthquake and tsunami put Fukushima Daiichi on the map. This nuclear plant was very badly damaged, which caused radiation leaks and the permanent damage of several reactors. It has now been closed down. India is the second most populous country in the world, with a growing population. Japan has about 10% of India's population, and its population is aging and shrinking. Life expectancy in India is lower than Japan's by 16 years. India's size and history of invasions has resulted in a very diverse country, whereas Japan is more homogeneous, probably due to it being an island nation and less easy to invade. India's many languages demonstrates this, whereas in Japan, despite some local dialects, everyone essentially speaks the same language. There are 22 languages spoken in India. India's society is very hierarchical, and the caste system still affects social interactions, the jobs people do, the schools they attend, and who they are expected to marry. Status and wealth is extremely important in Indian society. In contrast, traditional Japanese society and culture stresses the values of harmony, consensus decision-making, and social conformity. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down is a common Japanese saying and guideline of social behaviour. Based on GDP, both countries have very large economies. Japan has the third largest economy in the world, and India has the fifth largest economy. However, per capita, the Japanese are 6 times wealthier. In India, with the exception of deserts and mountains, there is high population density throughout the country, especially in the north along the Ganges. In Japan, however, the population density is highest on the coast. 1/3 of the population reside in or around Tokyo on the Kanto Plain. Although India's major cities have higher populations than the largest Japanese cities, only 1/3 of India's population live in urban areas, although this is growing. In contrast, over 90% of Japan's population live in urban areas. India's economy is very reliant on agriculture, and almost half of India's workforce are in the agriculture sector, with 60% of its land used for this purpose. This explains why 65% of India's population still live in rural areas, compared to less than 10% of Japan's population. Meanwhile, Japan has been one of the fastest developing nations, often leading the way in technology, with companies such as Toyota, Honda, Hitachi, Panasonic, and Sony. The land suitable for agriculture in Japan lies along the coasts and rivers. However, much of this has now been urbanized, like the Kanto Plain, where Tokyo and Osaka are located. To compare life in these two countries and the differences between life in rural areas and urban areas, I'll be focusing on the following places. In India, the urban environment of Delhi NCR, the capital city and its surrounding metro area, home to 26 million people, including 18 billionaires and 23,000 millionaires. The rural village of Ade Vishwanathapura in Karnataka, which lies approximately an hour north of the centre of Bangalore. I lived in New Delhi for 2 years and in Ade Vishwanathapura for 3 years, so know both these areas well. In Japan, I will be looking at life in Tokyo, Japan's capital city, and the surrounding metro area, which is home to a massive 32.5 million people. and Makia, a rural area on Japan's smallest and least populated island, Okinawa. By examining housing, jobs, and education in these places, I will compare life in urban and rural India and Japan. Firstly, let's hear from two of my friends, Rohan Misra, who lives in New Delhi, India, and Yuki Fukuda, who lives on the outskirts of Tokyo in Japan.
Namaste. My name is Rohan Misra and I'm 12 years old. I live in New Delhi, India. I live in a colony called Friends Colony East. This is considered an upscale colony with big houses and well-known business families, even though we are not. I live with my parents, grandparents, my younger sister, and 3 pets. It is very normal to have staff in India. We have 2 drivers, 2 guards, 1 cook, a nanny, 1 cleaner, and a gardener.
Konnichiwa. Hello, I'm Yuki Fukuda and I'm 13 years old. I live in Sagamihara City, which is in Kanagawa Prefecture next to Tokyo. I live in an apartment with my parents. There are a lot of apartments in this area. Japan is a very long country. It is 3,000 kilometers long. So each area has different climates. For instance, Tokyo has 4 clear seasons. Tokyo, it has a very hot and humid summer, but a very cold and dry winter. However, the north part of Japan, Hokkaido, has a very long and snowy winter. And the south part of Japan, Okinawa, has a very long and hot summer.
Some of the things I like here are my friends, family, food, parties, school, festival, old monuments, and parks. Some of the things I least like here are air pollution, garbage, traffic, dengue, beggars on the street, heat, rain, and monsoons during the summer.
The good thing about here is that this place is a commercial area. There are a lot of shops such as restaurants, barber shops, hospitals, karaoke, and etc. Since many people commute to the center of Tokyo, the train is packed with a lot of people. It takes an hour to get there and it is very harsh. Also, there are a lot of pollen flying in the air during March to April. A lot of Japanese people have hay fever, including me.
I go to the British School in New Delhi, and it's one of the few international schools in Delhi. It is one of the best schools in India, and there are 1,200 people at the school. There are 57 nationalities, and some of the main ones are Indian, British, Korean, and Japanese.
I attend Seiko Gakuin, an all-boys private school which has students from 12 to 18. You have to pass an exam to get a place. It is a Catholic school. There are many after-school activities and I am in physical science club. And this is my school uniform.
The languages I speak are Hindi, English, and Norwegian. In India, the main languages that people speak are Hindi and English. In India, there are 22 official languages, 122 major languages, and 1,599 other languages.
I speak English and Japanese. The main language here is Japanese.
Generally, for lunch and dinner, food is similar, and there will always be rice, roti with lentils, and dry dish for some kind of vegetables. In India, cow is a holy animal, so beef is not allowed in India. In our houses, we don't eat pork or lamb, and only eat chicken twice a week.
People think sushi is the only typical Japanese food, but that is wrong. These days, Japanese people eat several types of food. But I eat rice, miso soup, and natto every morning.
In India, there are a huge number of festivals that are celebrated, from many of the Christian and Muslim holidays to the numerous Hindu holidays. Some important ones here are Diwali, Holi, Dussehra, and Rakhi. Diwali is the festival of lights, Holi is the festival of colors, Dussehra is the victory of good over evil, and Rakhi is a celebration of brotherhood and love.
Even though there are a lot of celebrations in Japan, the main celebration here is the New Year's Day. Families gather and celebrate the start of the year by eating a special meal called osechi. Thank you for listening. ありがとうございました。
Delhi is a city of contrasts, and this includes housing, as it has to cater for those living below the poverty line to those who are extraordinarily wealthy. At one end of the spectrum are the palatial detached houses in the centre of New Delhi, such as on Aurangzeb Road near Lodi Gardens, and the sprawling farmhouses such as those found in South Delhi's Chhatarpur enclave. There are also very modern apartments, usually low-rise of 3 or 4 floors in wealthy areas of South Delhi like Shanti Niketan and Vasant Vihar. In areas like these, as land prices have risen, old houses have been knocked down and low-rise apartment blocks built on the land. The apartments are often quite spacious compared to city centre housing in many countries and are well appointed with modern amenities. There is also government housing for government workers in areas around Connaught Place and Moti Bagh. The famous Lutyens bungalows in New Delhi house senior government officials, military officials and senior judges. With land at a premium, most houses and apartments have very little in the way of outside space, possibly a tiny garden or a balcony or shared communal garden. Colonies such as Shanti Niketan often have a small park or grass area for their residents. Almost half the population of Delhi live in slum areas or unauthorised colonies without proper amenities, and over a fifth of the population do not have toilets. There was even an informal housing area right across the road from my school in Delhi's Chanakyapura. At this end of the housing spectrum are the cramped quarters of ageing and dilapidated housing, such as that found in East Delhi or in areas of Old Delhi. These are high-density, poorly constructed buildings. Frequently, families in the poorest areas, such as resettlement colonies, live in only one room and in unsanitary conditions. There is no social housing in Delhi. In the newest and fast-growing areas like Gurgaon and Noida, accommodation is mainly in mid-rise and high-rise tower blocks. The largest and high-end apartment blocks, like DLF Magnolias in Gurgaon, are modern, spacious apartments with shared facilities such as a clubhouse, bar, swimming pool, sports facilities, or even a cinema. Lower-end apartments in these areas are small and very basic. The design of houses and apartments is similar to homes in the UK, with rooms having designated users, although often the guest bedroom is on the ground floor. New, higher-end homes are built with en-suites to all bedrooms. Homes in Delhi get cold in the winter and extremely hot in the summer as the temperature rises to the high 40s. Air conditioning is common in many homes apart from those in the poor areas, but few homes have proper heating. Most Indian families live in homes with several generations. It is common for grandparents, parents and their children to all live in the same home, and families are often large. Indian homes are therefore very crowded and multi-generational. Although most houses or dwellings have electricity, there are sometimes power cuts, so more upscale houses or apartment blocks have generators or inverters. Due to water shortages, few homes have baths, and washing is commonly done with a bucket to save water rather than in a shower. In poorer areas, water is often delivered via tankers or rationed and only available at certain times of the day. Ownership of household white goods in India is low, but higher in urban areas compared to rural areas. Data shows ownership of fridges at 30%, washing machines at 14%, TVs at 66%, ACs and coolers at 19%. Ovens are very rare in India, and even many wealthier households don't have one, as traditional cooking is done on a hob. Cooking in Delhi is usually done on a gas hob using piped gas. However, lower income families use bottle gas or charcoal and oil burners. Land in Tokyo is under immense pressure and is very expensive, so homes in Tokyo are therefore very small and often in apartment blocks. Tiny apartments are common, and there is even a market for cleverly designed small apartments for young professionals who want affordable rent and a very central city location. Nakagin Capsule Tower is an example of a tiny space of 10-metre squared units. Families who require more space tend to live out of the city centre towards the suburbs, but a large amount of the housing there is also in apartments. Where there are areas of single-unit homes, houses are detached, although they are small in size and are densely packed, standing on small plots. The roads in residential areas are often very narrow, as houses are crammed in tight. The Japan Housing Corporation builds danshi apartment buildings for those on very low incomes. One unusual thing about Japanese houses is that they are seen to have a limited lifespan and depreciate with age. After a time they are torn down and a new building erected. The lifespan is usually about 20 years for wooden building and 30 years for concrete buildings. Many homes include at least one traditional Japanese-styled room, a washitsu with tatami flooring, shoji instead of curtains, and fusuma partitions. Typically, there are small separate rooms for the toilet, sink, and bath, although in small houses, this is often one space. Many young adults choose to continue living with their parents rather than living separately, even when they marry. However, with a low birth rate of 1.43 per woman, families are smaller on average than those in India. Traditionally, the older generation continue living with their children, so these extended family living arrangements are similar to those in India. Unlike in India, however, in metropolitan areas it is now fairly common for couples to live together before marrying. Despite the lack of space, the standard of living in Tokyo is extremely high. The signs of affluence in the post-war period were the three sacred treasures: a television, a fridge, and a washing machine. And by 1964, 90% of households in Japan possessed all three. 60% of homes in Japan have ovens, but microwaves are even more common, with over 90% of homes having one. This is far higher than in India. Ade Vishwanathapura, a small village in Karnataka just north of Bangalore, is the village that I lived in for 3 years. It is representative of many rural villages throughout India in many ways, though unusual in others due to its proximity to the new Bangalore airport and the speed of development of the tech hub of Bangalore, which is described as India's Silicon Valley. The area is still predominantly agricultural, although development is gaining pace due to overspill from the city and because of the relocation of the airport, more large businesses are moving in. Here villagers live in very basic houses, usually built out of blocks and rendered. There is often a flat roof as an additional outdoor space, and these are used for drying things like chilies. Some of the houses are actually quite large compared to the size of city homes, as space here is more readily available and they are often built on agricultural land. Agricultural land all around is being sold off for housing or business developments, and construction is going on everywhere. These new housing layouts often only have the roads built and the housing plots marked on them with building work not yet started. One layout that has been completed is Prestige Oasis. This is where I lived. While some homes have running water, there are many homes that do not have a tap or toilet facilities. Personal washing is often done with a bucket of water, and most houses do not have showers or baths. It is common to see people carrying water from a pump along the roads in this area. Compared to life in cities, villagers have very simple lives, own few possessions, and rarely have items like fridges, air conditioning, or washing machines. Washing is done by hand, and in some rural areas by the Dhobi community, a caste of washermen. Bottle gas is used for cooking, or charcoal or oil burners in more basic housing. There is no piped gas in rural areas. In locations that are even more rural than this, like some of the villages that I visited in Rajasthan, villagers often live in traditionally constructed huts, often in only 1 or 2 rooms, and live a much more traditional life. Okinawa is the smallest and least populated of Japan's 5 main islands. The total population is 1.4 million, of which about 0.8 million live in the Greater Naha urban area. The north of the island is the most sparsely populated area and contains the Yambaru National Park. Makia is a rural area in the north of the island. It is near the small city of Nago, which has a population of about 60,000 people. With good roads and infrastructure, this rural area is well connected to both Nago and the metropolitan area around Naha in the south of the island by an expressway. The housing found in Makia is primarily detached houses in reasonably sized plots with typical narrow lanes in between. Houses are more spread out than in the densely packed urban areas. There is a good deal of land here that has not yet been built on, both agricultural land and forest. Average home size is approximately 180 metres squared in rural areas versus 91 metres squared in Tokyo. Although in Nago you can find apartment blocks, these are small, low-rise buildings. Japanese homes in rural areas like this can be either traditional or modern in design. Traditional homes in Japan are made of timber with tiled or thatched roofs. Red roof tiles are very popular in Okinawa. They do not have designated uses for each room aside from entrance, kitchen and bathrooms. This is because all furniture is portable and can be carried from one room to another. Movable partitions or sliding doors called fusuma are used to split up living spaces. Overhanging roofs protect the houses from getting wet in the rain. One characteristic of Japanese homes is the genkan or entryway, which has a small area for removing shoes before stepping up into the house. Shoes are placed in a box and slippers for indoor use are worn inside. Modern houses are often built with timber frames with cladding or concrete and have coloured clay tiles on their roofs. They also have designated rooms like Western homes. Houses are either 1 or 2 floors. Rural houses have similar standards of living to urban homes, with items like fridges, TVs and washing machines very common. By comparing houses in India and Japan, there are a number of similarities and differences. While space is at a premium in both Delhi and Tokyo, apartments or houses are much smaller in Tokyo. Both Tokyo and Delhi have mid and high-rise apartment blocks as well as detached houses. Rural area housing in both countries tends to be in detached houses. Japan has a higher standard of living in both urban and rural areas, with a higher percentage of people owning white goods and universal access to water, electricity and sanitation, unlike in India. Indian rural housing is more basic than urban housing, however slum areas are rare in rural areas. Japan has social housing for low-income families, whilst India has slums and unauthorised settlements. Japan's traditional construction and house style is unique. Looking at jobs, unemployment in India is far higher than in Japan. Another general difference is that India has a very large number of day-wage casual workers rather than those in contracted employment. In contrast, the Japanese job market has been dominated by enormous companies that offer jobs for life and workers are very loyal. However, this is now changing due to recent recessions. Unlike India, Japan has a labour shortage due to a shrinking and elderly population and has recently seen a rise in part-time and more flexible working. Overall, India has a diverse economy and it has capitalised on its large educated English-speaking population to become a major centre for IT and business services. As India has developed, its major cities have taken on different roles. Delhi is the centre of government and a trading community. Mumbai is the financial centre and home to Bollywood film industry. Bangalore has developed in the tech business and has many jobs for software programmers and call centre staff. Looking at jobs in Delhi. Delhi is a centre for government jobs such as in administration, banks, police force and the railways. These are often seen as jobs for life with good pension provision and are therefore highly sought after. Delhi is a major business centre, especially for outsourcing and IT consultancy, and there are many call centres employing thousands of staff. Delhi has a large commercial centre, and there are many jobs in the retail and wholesale sector, especially in the thousands of small shops and markets which thrive here. Delhi has many large, modern, private hospitals as well as government ones, which employ many medical and administrative staff. There is a large and growing hospitality sector with hotels, restaurants and bars. Unlike in Japan and many Western nations, middle-class Indian families have household staff such as maids, cooks, drivers and gardeners. This provides many low-paid jobs. Delhi is the location of embassies and high commissions and is home to thousands of diplomatic staff from foreign countries. There are many workers employed by these families as house helps, drivers, cooks and nannies. Security is another big but low-wage employer. Most houses and apartments have their own guards and many shops, even small ones, have security guards too. With land in central Delhi being at a premium, Gurgaon has become the location for many international companies' offices such as Siemens, Deloitte, KPMG, Reliance Jio, Huawei, LG and Samsung. These employ many workers. There are a large number of jobs in the construction sector, especially in the growing areas of Gurgaon and Noida. Large construction projects often bring in workers from outside Delhi. There are many jobs in manufacturing as many factories are situated in Delhi NCR, like the auto industry company Maruti, which manufactures in Gurgaon. And in Noida, there are large electronics component manufacturers and manufacturers of clothing, mainly for export. As in all Indian cities, there are many jobs for taxi or rickshaw drivers. Tokyo is the largest urban economy in the world by GDP. It is a centre of business and finance and home to the headquarters of many international banks and insurance companies which provide a large number of managerial jobs in these sectors. It is the hub for Japan's transportation, publishing, electronics and broadcasting industries, and these sectors are all large employers. There are also jobs in manufacturing such as cars and electronics, in the pharmaceutical industry and in the IT sector. The headquarters of some of Japan's largest companies such as Honda, Mitsubishi, Japan Post Holdings and SoftBank Group are based in Tokyo, and these also provide many jobs. It is also an international centre of research and development, and it has many major universities which also provide jobs. Many workers are employed in construction jobs. As in all Japanese cities, there are jobs in the beauty industry such as hairdressers and barbers. With a strong retail sector, there are many sales staff and sales managers employed. Hotels, restaurants, bars and karaoke venues employ a large number of people, and as well as other roles connected with tourism and leisure. Both Delhi and Tokyo have strong economies and employ a large number of people across many different sectors. Tokyo's jobs are likely to be in more high-tech industries versus Delhi's, but both have strong construction and retail sectors. Household staff are far less common in Tokyo than in Delhi. In Adi Vishwanathapura, most residents have a farming background and limited educational qualifications. Local work is often on the land. The local crops are grapes and vegetables like an aubergine, and there are fields of herbs like mint and coriander. People also tend animals like cows, chickens, and sheep. Many people sell produce in small market stalls and by the roadside. Women often work as a domestic help or cleaner in the larger houses or on the new compounds that are being built nearby for India's growing middle classes. Men might work as a driver for a local family or as security guards. The shift away from agriculture to development has seen both men and women switch to working as gardeners for private households or for compounds instead of on the fields. Job opportunities for those with little education are scarce. People are often willing to travel long distances to work. Our house help, Ratna, lived over an hour's journey from our home. The village has only one small shop, but the nearby town of Rajamkunti has more opportunities for working in shops, selling anything from clothes to mobile phones, selling food and drink from the pavements, or cutting hair at the side of the street. There is a small medical facility in nearby Rajamkunti, which employs medical and administrative staff. There are some larger businesses nearby, for example a huge decathlon store about 20 minutes drive away and the airport 30 minutes away, and many more in the centre of Bangalore. However, getting good jobs there would require connections, and only those with a higher level of education would be employed by these types of companies, so rural workers living in Ade Vishwanathapura are highly unlikely to work in such places. Makia, in Okinawa, although rural, has few opportunities to work in the agriculture sector, though some tropical fruit is grown on the island. Generally, jobs depend on tourism and on servicing the population of the American military bases that are located there. Teaching jobs are plentiful, as Okinawa has the youngest and fastest growing population in Japan, and there are many educational establishments. Possible tourist sector jobs would include working in the local tourist attractions such as Okinawa Tsurami Aquarium or the Nagao Pineapple Theme Park, or working in the hotels, restaurants and cafes that can be found there. There are some opportunities to work in retail in the local shops or in local businesses. The nearby Motubu Peninsula has a large-scale quarry and cement factory which employs people in the area. The small ports not too far away will provide a small number of jobs. For those professionals who are willing to commute, more job opportunities can be found in the Naha area, although this is still an extremely small city compared to Tokyo and has limited job opportunities. Both rural locations have fewer job opportunities than the major cities offer. However, generally rural jobs in Indian villages like Ade Vishwanathapura are agricultural, and are more manual and more menial than jobs in rural Japan. Jobs in Makia are more likely to be connected to tourism. Although an hour's journey from either would enable you to reach a city, Bangalore is a far bigger city with many more opportunities than offered in Nahar. Lastly, I will look at education in India and Japan. Education in India is viewed as extremely important, and its improving education system is one of the factors contributing to its economic development. The government provides free and compulsory education from 6 to 14 years, and preschool private education is readily available. However, the quality of education in public schools is often low, with about a quarter of teachers being absent every day. School infrastructure is very basic, and schools are ill-equipped and have poor facilities. Private schools common among the middle classes in India. A third of 6 to 14-year-olds receive private education, though many of these are low-fee schools. Instruction is usually in English in private schools, but government schools teach in Hindi or the local language until 6th grade in the cities. The system tends towards learning by rote rather than developing problem-solving skills and is heavily focused on exam results. Children's school reports state not only their test results, but their ranked positions in their class, and for older children, their position in their board exams in their state and in the country at their grade level. Tertiary education is increasing and is taken up by about over a quarter of students. It is, however, very competitive, and only the very highest ranked students will pass the exams to gain highly prized places, especially at medical and engineering schools. There are a lack of seats at high-quality tertiary education institutes. A certain number of places at schools and universities are reserved for the lower, disadvantaged caste to try and even up the inequalities that persist. Japan's population is very well educated, and society highly values education for socio-economic mobility and for gaining employment in the country's high-tech economy. Japanese students consistently rank among the highest in the world in reading, maths, and sciences. Japan has compulsory education for children between the ages of 6 and 15, with many kindergartens for children between 3 to 5 years. Most students attend public schools in the younger years, but private education is more common at the upper secondary school and university levels. Japan's education system has, however, been criticized for its focus on standardized testing and conformity and strong academic pressure on students. Both India and Japan place a high value and importance on education and have compulsory and free education for children. However, the quality of the education system is much better in Japan, and Japan's population is also educated to a higher level, with more students staying on in tertiary education. Both systems can put high pressure on children and do not encourage as much problem solving and free thinking as systems in other countries, and those such as the IB syllabus which I studied when I lived in India. There is usually a wide choice of schools in urban areas in India, and Delhi is no exception. When I lived in Delhi, I attended the British School, which was awarding Best British School in the World 2018, and is a co-educational international school for children from nursery to year 13. It is housed in a brand new purpose-built building in Chanakyapuri, the diplomatic area of New Delhi, and has excellent facilities including a swimming pool, auditorium, large multi-purpose sports hall, drama studio, science labs, music room, a gym, 2 health centres, a tuck shop and a cafe that even the parents can use. The building has air conditioning as the temperatures get very hot in summer, and it also has an air purification system that covers all indoor spaces to protect against Delhi's air pollution. The meals served in the cafeteria are largely organic. Located close by is the American Embassy School, which has a similarly high level of facilities and is another international school. There are also many Indian private schools in the area, which usually run from nursery through to 12th grade, including some top private schools such as Delhi Public School, Vasant Valley School, Shri Ram School, Modern School, and Sardar Patel Vidyalaya. These are all very large elite schools with excellent facilities, are oversubscribed and are extremely difficult to get places at. Not all of these schools have air conditioning or air purification, but they do have computers and a high standard of education with the best teachers. Most of these schools teach solely in English. In the centre of Delhi there are also government schools, but most residents living in the more expensive areas send their children to private schools. These schools do not have the same level of facilities as the private schools, but provide a better quality of education than schools in more rural areas. They will teach in English after grade 6. Lower classes will send their children here. Everything is free and there are subsidies on uniforms and books. The schools are quite basic in terms of facilities, and the teaching standard is not always very high. However, some schools have built strong reputations and students perform well in exams. Many students from these schools aspire to attain government jobs. In Tokyo and the surrounding metro area, there is an extremely large choice of schools, including an American, British, and many other international schools. In reality, due to the large spread of the city and the time taken to commute, most Japanese will choose schools fairly close to their homes. The public schools are well funded, have excellent teaching and very high standards. However, an increasing number choose to send their children to private schools, such as the Seiko Gokin High School that my friend Yuki attends. This is a private, Catholic, all-boys school from grades 7 to 12. Entry is selective and based on exam performance. Its mission is to develop students who contribute to society through their spirit of dedication and academic attainment, and the school has a volunteering program. From grade 8, children are given Chromebooks and the school is equipped to a similarly high level to my school in Delhi, with air-conditioned gyms, swimming pool, tennis courts, astroturf, tatami room for martial arts, specialised laboratories, large auditorium and large libraries. In the village of Ade Vishwanathapura, there is a small government-run co-educational primary school which teaches classes from grade 1 to 5. It is housed in a small building of 3 classrooms and has 2 other rooms for non-teaching activities. The government website states that there is electricity at the school, a functional tap for tap water, and toilet facilities which are functional. The fact that this is stated indicates that not all schools are so lucky in this regard. The school has no playground and does not have any computers, although it does have a library of 272 books. A free midday meal is also provided. This will be basic and traditional in nature such as rice, roti, and a vegetarian curry. Classes are taught in the local Kannada language. This school will be fairly typical of rural village schools in India. The quality of schooling will be poor, and many of the children that attend this school will drop out of school before they are 16. After attending this primary school, most children will attend the government high school in Rajanakunte or the government primary and high school also in Rajanakunte. These schools will instruct in Kannada, not in Hindi or English, although they may be taught English as a second language. In the south of India, Hindi is rarely taught, even though it is an official language of the country. For those living in the village with higher incomes, a short journey from the village there are several private schools such as Orchids and Pula School. Plus, unusually, there are two excellent international schools, the school I attended, Stonehill International School, and the Canadian International School. These two schools exist due to the large number of expats in the area. In rural areas of Japan, there are fewer schools than in urban areas. However, they are generally well equipped and provide a better level of education than India's rural schools. Taking the example of Makia in Okinawa, there is a small school close by for primary-aged children, named Nago Municipal Makia Elementary School. A junior high is not far away. However, the senior high school is located in a nearby town, Okinawa Prefecture Nago Senior High School. There are no local private schools. The only private schools on the island are located in the metro areas of Okinawa and Naga. Schools here include New Life Academy, a Christian private school, or Okinawa Christian School International, another English-speaking Christian school. These would be an hour's drive away. Although they will be well equipped, teaching in these schools will not be as good as at those schools in more developed areas like Tokyo. An excellent education in first-class facilities is available in both Tokyo and Delhi for those able to pay for it. In terms of public and free education, then Japan offers an excellent standard of education for all, whether in urban or rural areas, whereas in India the quality of education is lower and especially poor in rural areas. To summarise my research, Japan is a developed nation, India is still developing, and the housing, jobs and education reflect this. In Japan, there is virtually no unemployment and people enjoy a very high standard of housing and education, whether in rural or in urban settings. The upper classes in India enjoy a high standard of living with excellent housing, education and job prospects. However, the vast majority of the population in India have far lower standards, especially the 250 million who survive on less than $2 a day. With all that said, having lived in India for 5 years, it is the most incredible country and I loved my time there.